Good morning, all. Good morning. Good morning to you all, and I welcome you as we have our annual fall academic honors school meeting, in which, among other things, we induct the members of the Cum Laude Society. And this is a really important meeting. It's one of the two we do each year where we really celebrate and recognize academic scholarship. And of course, I am amazed every day at what I see happening in the classroom. And so this is a really important meeting, and I'm delighted to be here. And what I want to talk about briefly, as I always open with some remarks, I want to talk about academic habits and why, as a faculty, we really care so much about them, and how I believe the process of giving you feedback on them is going to help you help you grow. And I would start with the obvious point, and that is that habits, right? Think about this. Habits of all kinds are things, not things that you were born with. It's not as if we are born with the habit of perseverance or focus. And you should never forget this. That is, these are things that develop with practice. And in educating the whole student, which is our mission as a school and as a faculty, we work very hard to try to help you develop those habits. So when you leave Taft, you will have a different set of habits than you began. And today, when we recognize great scholarship, and I mean that in our national merit, in our ranking scholars, and also in Cum Laude, here's a pretty safe bet. And the bet is this, that as a group, the students we recognize today have really strong academic habits, in particular the ones we focus on. That is, they plan well, they persist in the face of obstacles, they engage in learning, they're able to focus on tasks. It is impossible to imagine that they received the GPAs, they got to the level of achievement they did without having those habits. Take the 16 Cum Laude inductees. Altogether, at the end of the June marking period last year, so at the end of their upper mid-year, they, as a group, received a total of 364 habit grades, right? You all know what those, of course, when you get your report card. So 364 of them. Of that total, over half, that is 187 they received, were exceeds expectations. And I don't have to tell you that Taft teachers don't give out exceeds cheaply. You need to earn them. And over that entire number, 96% of them either met or exceeded expectations. And I find that jaw-droppingly impressive, because Taft's a really hard place. When I grade myself as the headmaster, there are plenty of days some habit is unacceptable, maybe approaching, and I really mean that. My guess is that you would say the same thing. You might have had a really solid week this week already, but if you look back and ask yourself about how would I grade myself on my habits, still say there was an area that needed attention. It's not just that the actual class is hard. That's hard enough. But it's also that we ask you to do all kinds of things every day that make it harder, including being here or signing into breakfast or going to sit down or what have you. And there may be a habit that you simply haven't developed as much yet. There's still areas to grow, like planning or organizing well. Or perhaps you say, I'm someone who needs to develop the habit of persevering in the face of setback. Or perhaps you're someone who says, I need to learn how to actively participate in learning more in the classroom. Or maybe you say, I still need to develop the habit of focus. Every day is a chance to develop those habits. And the teachers, those in the back of the room, they take this idea of offering you feedback very seriously, and they do it hoping that as you become more aware, the term teachers use is, as you become more metacognitive, more aware of your learning habits, you will get stronger. And the reason we care about this is that the research is really clear on this. That is, the habits predict success better than innate intelligence. That's important to remember. In other words, people who are able to do the things that you are asked to do here tend to outperform those who appear perhaps to be stronger on paper. That's not a feel-good talk. This is driven by data and by lots of studies. Now, where did this practice come from? That is, you may ask, why do the faculty care so much about offering the feedback, and where does this academic habits rubric process come from? I'll give you a very quick history. So, when I began teaching at Taft in the early 1980s, we did not have that academic habits rubric that you all know. Instead, there were four basic descriptors, A, B, C, and D. A meant exceeded expectations, B meant meets expectations, C was occasionally fails to meet expectations, and D meant fails to meet expectations. That A, B, and C, and D were part of the Taft vernacular. We use those all the time. You might be talking with an advisee saying something like, why do you think you had a C effort grade in biology? Or, boy, it's really awesome. In the fall you had all Bs, but now you have 3 As and 2 Bs. That's the system we had. It worked. But over time, the faculty began asking questions about the limits of the A, B, C, and D. For one thing, almost no student ever was given a D, and any grading scale in which 25% of it is not used has a problem. But the bigger reason was this. It seemed as if the A, B, C, and D in those brief descriptions was a pretty blunt tool. That is, it wasn't discriminating enough, it wasn't specific enough. It didn't allow us as teachers to be as clear in offering feedback as we wanted. A student, for instance, hearing that maybe they were occasionally failing to meet expectations, what exactly did that mean? So in 2013, I charged a committee, and it was led by Mr. Wilson, who was the academic dean at the time, to look at the way we asked students to think about the way they approach learning and their habits in learning. The committee had a totally clean slate. They understood that they could come back with no changes. They could come back with a totally new system. The charge to the committee read very simply, what is the best method to articulate and assess the skills and character traits that lead to academic success and lifelong learning? It was a wonderful charge. Just what are the things that we want students to be able to do as habits in order to become lifelong learners? And the committee did fantastic work. They began by reading a lot of research on the habits that are identified by leaders and proven by research to be vital to performance. The more they learned, and the more they talked, and the more they talked with the faculty, the more they came back to the idea was that what we wanted to offer feedback on each of you was on habits in 4 domains. And you know these 4, but let me remind you of them. Planning, persistence, engagement, and self-regulation. And for each of these, there would be those 5 levels. So we would be looking at those 4 domains and offering feedback at 5 different levels, ranging from exceeds to meets to approaches to needs attention and unacceptable. But I think more important than just the scale was the fact that the committee came up with specific language which spoke to the extent to which you were actually exhibiting these habits. And again, I say this because I want you to understand how thoughtful and strategic and careful the faculty were in saying we need to help students by offering good feedback. And you've probably seen that single-page rubric. If you have not, here's some advice. Ask a teacher for a copy of it, tape it on your desk, and look at it often. I think it's as good as there is in private education. That is, that system of offering feedback in those different areas, I think is as good as you'll see at any school. Now, we probably have 100 different teaching philosophies on the faculty, but one thing every teacher would agree on is this, that offering accurate, timely, and objective feedback is essential to learning. I'll say it again. Offering objective, timely, accurate feedback is critical to learning. It is so obvious we can forget it. Imagine what it would be like to hand in a paper and never get it back with those comments, or to take a math test and not see the teacher's corrections, or sing a piece and not know how it sounded, or play a game and not hear from the coach afterwards. We learn when we are asked to perform a challenging task with clear expectations on what failure, competence, and excellence looks like, and after which someone gives us feedback on the extent to which we have succeeded. Now, your teachers take this incredibly seriously because they want to help you grow, and so they give you a ton of feedback formally on discussions, on papers, on tests, debates, labs, presentations, and so on. But they also do it less formally, but equally as importantly, when the teacher pulls you aside after class and says, hey, that was a really interesting insight you offered, or you seem particularly well prepared for this test, or that's the 3rd day you have not had your book, or you would benefit from asking more questions in class. Sometimes the feedback is hard to hear. It might be critical. It might point out where you fell short in an area where a habit needed to be developed, but that's how we learn. So it's a guess, and a pretty good one, that the students we recognize today took the feedback from teachers really seriously, and over time those habits improved. And I just end by saying that is true for every single one of you. It doesn't matter your age or how many years you've been here. The academic habits we've identified do not fall into the you either have them or you don't category. They are tendencies every one of you can work on and get better at. And if you do, when you're handed a diploma, you will clearly be different than the student arrived. And you see, we as faculty care a lot about your grade point average, but we really are interested in the habits you're developing. Remember, you can't bring that 89.7 with you after you leave Taft, but the habits you can. So those are my thoughts on the academic habits and the ways in which we try to help them develop in you. And I'll turn it over to Mrs. Kennerson, who is going to introduce our National Merit Scholars. Ms. Kennerson.
Good morning. The following students received commendation from the National Merit Scholarship Program for their outstanding performance last year on the PSAT, finishing in the top 2.1% of all 1.6 million test takers. Please come forward when I read your name and form a line stage left in alphabetical order. Thomas Archie, Jonathan Chang, Sean Dunbar, Hunter Essex. Come on up. Dikran Ismerlian, Julia Kashimura, Meredith King, Sierra Olette, Christopher Pellegrini, Alexander Robertson, Sarah Sawyer, and Edvin Von Trock. A round of applause.
Thank you.
Sarah?
Meredith's right there. Meredith's right there.
Sarah. There's Edmund. Vicky, we're out of order.
I did.
Recognize them all.
Yep. The following students were semifinalists in the 2020 National Merit Scholarship Program for their outstanding performance last year on the PSAT, finishing in the top 1% of all test takers. They are now eligible to be a National Merit finalist to win scholarship money. Please stand as your names are called. Logan Clue Backrack, Ellie Catherine McKay, Chloe in absentia. These were the ranking scholars last year at Taft for the 2018-19 academic year with the highest unweighted averages in their classes. Please stand and remain standing when I read your name. For the class of 2022, last year's lower mids with a 96.58 unweighted average, Lance Zhang. For the class of 2021, last year's mids with a 97.92 unweighted average, Benjamin Lay. And for the class of 2020, last year's upper mids, with a 97.08 average, Chloe in absentia. The Cum Laude induction. Founded in 1908, the Cum Laude Society is the National Scholarship Society in secondary schools, corresponding to Phi Beta Kappa and Sigma Xi in colleges and scientific schools. A maximum of 20% of the senior class may be elected into membership in the Cum Laude Society. This morning, we will induct 16 members of the class of 2019 who merit inclusion into the society based on their academic records for both their middle and upper middle years. At this spring's graduation, this first group will be joined by other seniors whose selection will be based on their records for their upper mid and senior years. These 16 students inducted this morning represent the top 9.7% of the class. Will those inducted into the Cum Laude Society please come forward when I call your name? Nicholas T-Bone Baird. Olivia Rose Gasser. Iwan Stefan Kim. Meredith Louise King. Renan Larpchuron. Michelle Mengchuan Lian. Jihao Tony Liu. Ellie Catherine McKay. Kira Madison McNerney. Sierra Modestina Olette. Ernest Protas. Megan Jessica Spangenberg. Zachary Max Tonelli. Tatiana Sunik. Hallie Barrett Wagner. Zongyang Peter Yu. Congratulations to the ranking scholars. Thank you.
We're going to meet in the courtroom for a photo. We are adjourned. Thank you.